Well, hi there. It has taken over a year to get to this point. 3 total videos and a lot of effort constructing phylogenies. But we are finally ready to discuss the final clade of rodents. A clade so distinct from other rodents that it was long considered to be something apart from the rodents altogether. And this is probably the largest rodent clade that is also universally loved by humans. The Caviomorpha, the guinea pig form mammals. And being a human myself, I love them. How could you not? This group includes not only the largest rodent alive today, but also the largest rodent known to have ever lived, Josephus artigacea monesi, which weighed at least a ton, possibly more than 2.5 tons. That's well more than a bison, and one serious ROUS.
Firstly, what about the ROUSs?
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist.
Whereas their closest relatives are found primarily in the Old World, mostly Africa, Caviomorpha is a New World clade, principally found in South America, with only limited success north of Mexico. As is the case with opossums, being the only extant lineage of marsupials to have colonized the North after the Great American Interchange, when North America and South America became connected for the first time. Well, only one extant lineage of caviomorph has done the same. Though there were North American capybaras until not that long ago. And they were bigger than modern capybaras. But even if they were alive today, it would still be safe to say that this is a principally South American lineage. There are approximately 10 extant families in this clade, though the phylogenetic work is, as has been the case with most of the rodents, a bit of a train wreck. I have constructed the best phylogeny that I can, but keep your salt close at hand. You're likely to need it. It appears that the first caviomorphs came to South America around 40 million years ago, probably from Africa, based on their phylogenetic placement squarely in an African clade. After arriving, they quickly radiated, and most of the families that exist today were present by about 30 million years ago. This type of rapid radiation following an introduction is not all that uncommon, as many niches are likely available. All of these 10 or so families fall into 2 large clades, one with 4 families and the other with 6. And since the smaller of the 2 clades includes actual guinea pigs, and this is the guinea pig form rodent clade, I think it's appropriate to start there. Not to mention the fact that you have waited long enough to talk about New World porcupines, and they're in this clade as well. Much more closely related to guinea pigs than they are to Old World porcupines, but still the family most distantly related to the other 3, which together form a clade called the Cavoidea. But let's start with the guinea pigs and work our way back to the porcupines. Despite being the namesake of the whole clade, the guinea pig family, Cavoidea, is one of the smallest families of rodents in existence today. That is in terms of species, though not the smallest family that we'll talk about today. And when I say small, I mean this in terms of the number of species. There are only 19, not in terms of actual size. The largest living rodent on the planet is one of those 19. One of the 2 extant species of capybaras, which can weigh over 90 kilos, more than 200 pounds. Also in this group are maras, which I adore, and a bunch of things generally called cavies, including guinea pigs. In general, this group is made up of relatively large herbivorous rodents with large box-shaped heads and tiny, often not visible tails. Due to the extinction of the North American capybara, this is today a nearly pure South American family. They only barely make it into Central America. They have 4 toes on each front foot, but only 3 on the hind feet, like an emu. They also produce rather few offspring for a rodent, after relatively long gestation times, 150 days for a capybara. The closest relatives of the caviids are the 14 or so species of agoutis and acuchis in the family Dasyproctidae. Like their closest relatives, they come from South and Central America, and also seem to have 4 front toes and emu hind feet. And tiny tails, though they are somewhat more gracile in shape. Other than the maras, caviids tend to be more stocky in build. And these guys have the more traditional rat or squirrel shaped head, not the rectangular heads of their cousins. and much smaller ears than maras, which is probably the only caviid that you could potentially confuse for a deciproctid. In general, despite their similarities, you shouldn't confuse the two families because of the differences in body and especially head shape. If you were going to confuse another family with Cavoidea, it would probably be their next closest relatives, the two species of pacas in the family Cuneiculidae, as they are also stocky with more square heads. Though I would argue that pacas look more like baby tapirs than they do like caviids. I mean, just look at that coloration. They just lack the trunk in the front and the junk in the rear. And they're rodents. Like tapirs, they're found in South and Central America and even make their way into Mexico, though there aren't any in Asia. So that's a point for their ungulate doppelgangers. Very different from their closest relatives, pacas have 5 toes on each hind foot, though still only 4 on the front. But like their closest relatives, they mostly just walk on 3 hind toes. So you can probably see how we went from the more normal rodent toe arrangement to the emu feet that we saw before. Like tapirs, and some of their closest relatives like capybaras, pacas spend considerable time in and around water. They can stay submerged for as long as about 15 minutes, which is an eternity for a rodent. Though they also live in burrows, and I don't think tapirs tend to do that. And instead of a proboscis, they have resonance chambers in their cheeks to enable them to make a loud, scary growling noise. So these are the 3 families that make up the Cavoidea, which you know brings us finally to the New World porcupines of the family Arethizontidae, which includes a total of about 19 species of pokey rodents that are not closely related to the Old World pokey rodents in the family Hystricidae that we discussed previously. There are a lot of subtle differences between the two families, like the fact that their molars are rooted and they have a complete clavicle or collarbone, but they also tend to have a long, prehensile tail, unlike Old World porcupines, which is handy, kind of literally, because they're much more arboreal. Their quills also tend to be dispersed amongst other hairs rather all over the body, are barbed, and often detach when they become embedded in the flesh of an attacker. All of this is very different from the Old World porcupines. But, like their well-defended Old World doppelgangers, they still have a life history of an animal that doesn't get killed much. They generally only have 1 offspring per year, and they gestate for sometimes over 200 days. That's getting pretty close to human sorts of numbers, not rat kinds of numbers. The North American porcupine clearly has established itself in North America, where it persists to this day. But, as has been the case with their closest relatives, all of the rest are found farther south. And while this isn't present in the North American porcupine, which has a bit of a caviid face, most of them have a fun, almost pig-like snout, including the one that tried to become my best friend in Peru. Look at this porcupine! Oh my gosh, that is the
shine your light on
thing ever. Hi, pal.
Contrary to popular belief, they do not throw their spines.
This is an arboreal porcupine. Hey, buddy. Hi. Oh, that is the coolest thing.
Want to touch him?
So bad.
We're gonna be careful for this car hitting him here.
Okay, here. Should I try driving that way a little?
Oh, this flat. I'll flash.
Yeah, prehensile
I'll flash the car.
porcupine.
Oh, he's gonna come to you. Huh?
Yeah. I'm call if you do.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy. You gotta get off the road in a second here. Wow.
When you're spiky enough, you just don't need to be afraid of much. And that gets us to the end of the smaller clade of caviomorphs. And honestly, pretty much all of the things that we knew had to be in this clade, which makes you wonder what we have in this other clade. But I can tell you at least one family that you likely know exists right now. This one, the family Chinchillidae. And since this larger clade of caviomorphs itself includes 2 large clades, I will start with the one that includes something that we already know about. Chinchillas. And then we will get to all of their closest relatives. So check this out. What the heck is that? My sister-in-law Jessica sent me a photo of one of these a few years ago when she was in Peru. What the heck is it? I mean, it looks basically like a rabbit, but that tail clearly isn't right. Well, turns out that this is a viscacha, the closest relatives of the chinchillas. Specifically, this one is a northern viscacha, one of the 4 species of mountain viscachas. There's also one species of plains viscacha. But since mountain viscachas are more closely related to chinchillas than they are to plains viscachas, that would mean that chinchillas are viscachas too. At least if viscacha is to be understood to be a natural monophyletic group. But there are 7 total species in the family Chinchillidae, composed of chinchillas and other viscachas. Unlike rabbits, they are rodents and have long tails. But they do have large ears that are, in most cases, somewhat long and rabbit-like. They are about rabbit-sized and have longer back legs than front legs. They all live in South America, with all but the plains viscacha living in the Andes Mountains, where I used to live, though I never saw one. It's okay, I saw vicuñas, flamingos, cool amphibians, lizards, and more. Much more life than I ever saw living in the Atacama Desert. But never one of these. Their success in the mountains is likely highly related to their extremely dense fur. Most have 4 toes on the front and 4 on the back, though plains viscachas have only 3 on the back. And they all have long, bushy tails. They're all herbivores and live in large colonies, which is probably how we should keep chinchillas. The closest relatives of chinchillas and other viscachas are these, the 10 species of chinchilla rats of the family Abrocomidae, which are neither chinchillas nor rats. Though we probably know by now that rat is just a name for any relatively large, but not too large, rodent that you feel like calling a rat. And they are the only other family in the clade Chinchilloidea, the hagfish of chinchillas, if you will, at least if all viscachas are chinchillas. And they look pretty much like if a chinchilla and a rat had a baby, so chinchilla rat seems rather appropriate. Though there is some debate as to whether or not they are actually sister to the Chinchillidae. They may belong to the other clade that we're going to discuss later, Octodontoidea. But we'll get to them soon enough. I'm just glad you still have your salt with you. They certainly do look like chinchillas, some more than others. And they also live in the Andes Mountains, so if that similarity is just due to convergence, it does make sense. Similar, or in this case, same habitats can result in similar forms. In some cases, they look more like chinchillas than do viscachas. So even if they are closely related, it is still probably convergence that accounts for their uncannily similar appearance. That or viscachas have lost the ancestral chinchilla appearance. Generally, chinchilla rats are smaller than chinchillas, but the largest chinchilla rats are larger than the smallest chinchillas. They have somewhat longer faces, 5 hind toes instead of 4, and tails that are much less bushy than those of chinchillas. On the middle 3 of those 5 back toes, they have stiff hairs that they use like little combs. So a long-faced, sub-fluffy-tailed, 5-digited comb-toer is a chinchilla rat. A short-faced, fluffy-tailed quadratoer is a chinchilla. But if chinchilla rats turn out not to be the closest relatives of chinchillas and other viscachas, then it would be these, the pakarana, the sole extant member of the family Dinomyidae, a group that once included bison-sized mega-ROUSs, and that you would probably only confuse with a paca. You remember the family Cuniculidae. It's a pretty strong resemblance. Heck, the word pakarana means false paca in the Tupi language. Paca is also a Tupi word. These guys are also found in many of the same regions of northwestern South America. So we have another false baby tapir rodent in the same place where you might find the other false baby tapir rodents and actual baby tapirs. It also lacks the junk and the trunk of tapirs, and it has a long tail. Honestly, to me, it looks like a cross between an African porcupine and a wombat, with the tail of an opossum and the color of a baby tapir. And while way smaller than a bison, at 15 kilos, they are a rodent of considerable size, to be sure. Unlike pacas, pakaranas tend to be social, hanging out in groups of 4 or 5, all sitting up to eat their food like prairie dogs, and having only 4 toes on each foot, where the pacas have 5 on the hind feet. But I would go with the tail, the bulk, and the buddies to tell them apart. And that brings us to the final rodent clade. And a most disturbing clade it is indeed. I mean, if you remember this. And this, we'll now take a look at this. If I told you that these 3 animals all form a clade, would anyone be shocked? No. But you already know that this and this are not that closely related to one another. Because muskrats are closely related to things like deer mice, and beavers are closely related to pocket gophers. Well, there isn't a rodent more distantly related to this or this than is this. And there is no rodent more distantly related to a pocket gopher than is this. And there is no rodent more distantly related to a deer mouse than is this. But those creatures are all closely related to one another. They are all members of the infuriating clade Octodontoidea. Okay, so let's start off with these false beavers. That is a Nutria. It's one of somewhere around 85 species of what are called spiny rats in the family Echimaidae, making it the most speciose family we have encountered since we left the mice behind. This family is mostly found in South America, but they do get up into Central America and the West Indies. Nutrias obviously look like beavers or muskrats, but they aren't. But most of this family looks like rats. Of course, if they are rats, to be monophyletic, all rodents at this point would need to be rats. But you know what rats are. Any rodent that isn't too big or too small that I feel like calling a rat. Though some, like the Desmerit's hutia, look like a woodchuck and a wombat had a baby and gave it a rat tail. This is a crazy group that probably needs its own video eventually. They're called spiny rats because they have some spiky hairs. Like they're considering that porcupine path that the rodents have already embraced fully at least twice. But in the meantime, they're playing with other defenses, like the popular salamander and squamate ability to autotomize their tails. Yeah, they can drop their tails. Did I not say that they were an upsetting clade? And they don't grow back, so they got that move from the crested geckos, it would seem. For the most part, they are either arboreal and rat-like, or fossorial and gopher-like. Obviously, with the occasional semi-aquatic beaver-like form. In many ways, they seem to be South America's answer to the mice. Though maybe not just this family alone, but rather the whole troubling Octodontoidea. The last two families in this nightmare are both more closely related to one another than they are to the spiny rats. These would be the families Octodontidae and Tenomyidae. And I'll start with the Tenomyidae, better known as Tucos-tucos, because they name themselves like Pokemon. They're called Tucos-tucos because they say tuk tuk all the time. And there are something like 70 species of them in South America, filling essentially the same ecological niche as pocket gophers in North America. And looking a heck of a lot like a pocket gopher, just without the cheek pouches, and maybe with slightly larger eyes. But in general, if you see a pocket gopher, but you're in South America, this is probably what it is. What you won't know is how many chromosomes it has. Chimpanzees have 24 pairs of chromosomes, whereas humans have only 23. It's pretty clear that our shared ancestors had 24 as well, but humans have 23 due to a fusion of two of the chromosomes into a single giant chromosome. It's pretty cool. It's also possible for chromosomes to split, be duplicated, or even deleted. And all of these things can change the chromosome number. Tucos-tucos can have anywhere from 5 to 35 chromosome pairs, which is insane. Though it's pretty similar in foxes. And not all dogs have bones. And since we normally talk a lot about skeletons in October, what do you say we talk about that this October? But there is one more family here left to discuss. The final rodent family. The 14 species of viscacha rats, cururos, rock rats, and degus of the family Octodontidae of South America. The name Octodontidae refers to the figure-8 shape wear pattern that their teeth often get. But let's just face it, they look like rats and mice with short, round little chinchilla faces. And one of them has 51 pairs of chromosomes. Others have only 19. And I really wish I understood more about how chromosomal numbers can fluctuate so rapidly in some lineages. So please, let me know what you know about that. But that gets us to the end of the rodents already. And if you've made it this far, then you're probably going to want to be sure that you are subscribed and have clicked the little bell so you don't miss our years in the making feature-length tour of all of the mammals coming up just a little bit later this year. As always, like and subscribe. Hope to see you real soon. This one video has been an unbelievable amount of work. Digging into the rodents has been a nightmare. And I just want to thank our patrons on Patreon who support us making content like this, who just help us be able to put in the extra time that it takes to make this kind of content, because I think there's a reason that most people don't make content like this. It's really intense. And if you want to support us being able to make more content like this in the future, or just see the cool features we have for our patrons, please consider checking it out. The closest relatives of the caviids are the 14 or so species of agoutis, and I think that's right, couchies? Maybe we should Google that one. You remember the junk in the rear. You can't unsee it. Yeah, that's the right response.
That is legit beaver face.
This family is mostly found in South America, but they do get up into Central America and the West Indies. I'll get you! So guinea pig is the only rodent I've knowingly eaten.
Knowingly.
Yeah. Well, I've eaten Peruvian hot dogs. Who knows what's in there? At first I wouldn't eat them. I'm like, I don't even know what goes into a United States hot dog.
Yeah.
What goes into a Peruvian hot dog? Later on I'm like, these are wonderful. There was a big time when the pioneers were just first getting established here, and then a great swarms of Mormon crickets, which are a katydid, came through and were apparently like decimating their crops, and you know, it was looking like the end. And so they prayed for a miracle, and seagulls came, California gulls, which are the Utah state bird. They came and they ate all these Mormon crickets, and in fact they were eating them all so much that they would fly off, throw up all the ones they'd already eaten, and go back and eat more. You know, they weren't eating them for sustenance. It was just a miracle. And it really is a neat story. But also, I think there's the possible version of this story, which was the pioneers were really struggling. And so God sent a virtually bottomless supply of protein. That if they had just captured and dried, there wouldn't have been a pioneer under 300 pounds come spring.